Okay, good morning, council. We have everybody here, so I'll call the meeting to order at 9:30. We'll begin with adoption of the agenda. And Mr. Frank, you had something to say on the agenda?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, there were two items that were previously populated. One this morning, item 7.6 doesn't show up on the copy, but it is there on your electronic agenda, as well as in-camera closed session 11.1, where you will have a delegation from Go Broadband. And those were previously populated.
Okay. So, any additions further than to the agenda? Amend?
No, your worship.
Anything from council? I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as presented then. Council Prestige.
We'll make a motion that council adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. We have the regular council minutes from 23rd November 2022. Any errors or omissions there? Councillor Wilhelm.
I'll motion that we adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting, November 23rd, 2022, as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All in favor? That is carried. We'll jump down to 5.1. Schedule of fees, bylaw for the airport lease rates, bylaw 593. Mr. Frank.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, we're recommending to amend the schedule of fees for the airport's lease rates as previously discussed by council, as well as the Schedule A that's part of the lease schedule, and you have to do this every time you amend the schedule of fees. So there will be, in the new year, a number of other fees being looked at, including water and sewer rates.
Okay. Any discussion on this? Councillor Dean.
Through the chair to admin, I may have missed this, but is the term open-ended, or is it a one-year term or a five-year term for these fees?
Your worship, they're up to 25 years, with a 5-year renewal on the lease rates. So every 5 years they're re-looked at, correct? Four? Three. Three.
Okay, thanks. And in terms of, if council decided they wanted to change it, they'd have to wait for 3 years before they make
No,
changes?
your worship, through to Councillor Dean, there is a clause in there that we have to give appropriate notice. And I think it's a 1 year notice, or I believe it's 1 year, but we can double check that.
Okay, yeah, I'd like clarity on that.
Okay.
Okay. So you want clarity on it now, or you want clarity on it at a future meeting, or?
Well, if we're gonna give readings to this bylaw and pass it, then I'd like that question answered before we pass it.
Okay.
We're just gonna see if we can find a quick lease. Where are they in the directory?
I don't know if they're in the directory.
Are there any other changes to the schedule of fees? It's just the lease rates
No.
for the lots?
No, your worship, members of council, just the ones that are highlighted in yellow on your document. Second last page.
And what was the change from to?
It was lowered based on the average of the other municipalities in the surrounding area. Went from 220 to
275.
275 to 180, right?
3 different rates.
Yeah.
Counselor Dean.
So this was vetted through the Airport Advisory Committee and then back to council. So I apologize, I just should have caught that question before. But I just, there could be a situation where that 3-year renewal just kicks in and council has a different direction for an area of the airport and your hands are tied for a while. So I suspect we have a 1-year window, but I'd just like that clarified.
Mr. Bushon.
Through the Charter Council, so these new rates will be offered to all the leaseholders at the airport, regardless where they are in their rotation.
Sorry, say that again?
These new lease rates will be offered to all the leaseholders, regardless where they are in their renewal schedule.
Okay.
Because your worship, members of council, because you're lowering them, right? So we believe that, and there, I know there's a clause in the agreement that says that the agreement can be amended by mutual consent. So if both parties agree, we can lower their rates. So I'm not anticipating somebody to say no,
No, I'd like to pay more.
Yeah. or I'll continue to pay.
I'm just wondering if we should table this. Counselor Dean.
Yeah, the more I think about this, I think my question is more related to the actual lease itself and not the fees. So the lease of the property is a 20-year lease, is that correct, did you say?
25.
Yeah, 20, 25.
25.
Yeah, so you know what, my question relates to that lease. So these fees I'm fine with.
Okay. Okay, so we're okay. Counselor Cook.
Make a motion the council gives first reading to bylaw 59322, amending the schedule of fees.
All right, motion on the floor to give first reading. Any discussion on that? Okay. All in favor? Excellent. First reading is passed. If you want to do this all today, we can keep going. Counselor Prestige.
I'll make a motion that council give second reading to bylaw 59322, amending schedule of fees.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Counselor Kuchen.
I'll make a motion that council proceed to third and final reading of bylaw 593-22, amending schedule of fees.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? This one has to be unanimous in order for us to continue to third reading. All in favor? Any opposed? I see a unanimous on that reading, so we will carry on, or we can carry on. Go ahead, Counselor Kush.
Make a motion the council gives third reading to bylaw 593/22, amending the schedule of fees.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. That'll bring us to governance and priorities meeting next date. So, we had at the last governance and priorities meeting, we had a few counselors that were absent, so we thought that we would just push the date until the next meeting, and that way we had everyone here. So pull out your calendars and let's see if we can get a date nailed down for the governance and priorities meeting. What date were you recommending on here? Where do we have to be about, Mr. Frank?
Your worship, to all of council, that's entirely up to you. We'll give you our dates that we don't, I don't think we have any particular dates other than the first week of January. We're not recommending because we just come back from off holidays and we'd have to prepare the agenda prior.
Okay. Councilor Kush, go ahead.
Just, the chair, are we looking at a December or January meeting on this?
Well, that's kind of what I was asking.
Oh, yeah, your worship, we're looking at January.
Thank you. All right, let's get into January. I don't have quite as many dots in this one, there's like actually a couple free, so. Early January probably, first or second week. Counselor Wilhelm.
I was gonna say this in the roundtable portion, but I'm going to be gone out of country from December 26th to January 8th.
Oh. January 8th.
So I don't think I'd be able to.
So
Teams
January
anyway.
11th might be a possibility.
There's still off week of the council meetings, so it would, if there's an evening meeting on the 11th, works perfect for me.
11th works, but there's actually, is that a Chamber of Commerce meeting scheduled then? Did we finally get offset with the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, this would be an evening.
Yeah, evening.
Oh, right, governance priorities. Okay. Yeah, I can do the 11th. Anyone else?
Works for
I'm
me.
good on 11th.
I can do the 11th after 7.
Okay, so 11th at 7:15. Work for everybody? All right. Anyone wish to make the motion? Counselor Williams.
Make a motion that council sets the next governance priorities committee meeting on January 11th, 2023 at 7:15 PM.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Okay, that is carried. But one more schedule item to deal with, item 7.2. My computer closer here, I can't see. So this was the discussion around moving regular scheduled meetings out of that 2-week rotation, right, and into.
Your worship, members of council, this is the discussion that council had in regards to trying to accommodate as many councilors as they want in, or as many as you can in regards to their work schedules. However, having said all that, when we canvassed the 3 councilors that it totally affects is the first and third Wednesday of the month will be difficult for one counselor, and then rotating one evening and one day meeting seems to continue to work best. And then depending on your activities, you may just end up canceling a meeting. For example, January 4th, I believe we have to cancel because we're just again back from holidays.
Well, what do you think, council?
Yeah,
I would say for my end, the current rotation I'm working on is changing here into January anyways. And I'm just gonna have to try to make things work with what we do here, so whatever works best for the other guys, so I'll do what I can.
Counselor Williams?
Option 1 obviously works really good for me, that's what we're currently doing, and the evenings, doesn't matter day or night for me, but option 2 becomes really conflicting, but that's just me, and it shouldn't be only about me.
Okay. Counselor,
Option 1 is the best bet for me.
option 1? Okay. And option 1 is what we're currently doing? I thought we were doing every 2 weeks.
except we don't have a 5 PM start.
Every second would be 5 PM.
Sorry?
Every second one on option 1 would be an evening, 5 PM.
Right, but
That'd be the only change.
I thought we were doing a meeting every 2 weeks.
Yeah, every other Wednesday.
Every other. Okay, sorry.
And we do have the ASB Provincial Conference on the 2nd Wednesday, I believe, in January.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I thought that too, Peter, but that's just January, so.
Yeah, just January.
I have to deal with it. Okay,
And always, your worship, members, council, not that 4 makes a council quorum, so you can have a meeting without 3 councilors absent. And I understand that council does like to be involved, but sometimes schedules prevent that.
okay. Yeah, and I just got my other commitments with RMA, I just kinda got them used to this schedule, so it's best that they try and stay away from anything on a council meeting day, so that's good. All right, well, and does the start on January 18th work for everybody?
The only consideration is, four of us, or potentially four of us, are at the Ag Service Board. And I think you're registered as well.
Yeah, I registered as well.
So when we start is, I would suggest the 18th probably isn't gonna work unless we have a council meeting up there.
What's the, what's the ASBA again? What date is that?
I think that's the last.
17th to the 20th.
Oh, okay.
17th and 20th. So should we start it on the next cycle then, the 1st of February? Does that make sense? Mr. Frank?
Well, your worship, no, I would recommend that you do that because they continue on, because we will have to amend your procedural bylaw, which indicates the every other Wednesday, right? Every 2 weeks during the day, and we'll have to move one to 5 o'clock meeting. The suggestion, because the 4th we're canceling and now we're doing the 18th, because you're in Grand Prairie, could we possibly do the 16th? I guess you could do it the Friday, the 20th, that week. Because we won't have a meeting in January then.
Well, Friday the 20th on my calendar, it says the ASB ends at 4:30.
The 16th, I'm not sure how it works for you guys.
16th.
It's an evening meeting.
16th.
Evening,
so I can-
okay.
16th evening works.
Day off shift then, Dave?
Yeah, we do evening on the 16th.
So we move the 18th meeting to January 16th PM?
Yeah, so as regards to this, you will set your regularly scheduled meetings every second Wednesday, right? The first meeting of the month being a day meeting, the second meeting of the rotation, because will actually switch, right? Be at 5 o'clock.
So can we just basically read option 1 as the motion? And then make a second motion to move January 18th meeting to January 16th? Is that cleanest?
I believe you can.
Should be easy.
That seems most straightforward for me. I'm getting a nod from Councillor Cush.
I'll make a motion that council continue with option 1 for our rotation for our meetings.
Which is,
Read out the option, please.
Okay. Make motion that we go option 1 every other Wednesday per the current rhythm, with every second Wednesday being 5 PM start. January 18th, 2023 being the first evening meeting of the year.
Okay, very good. That motion's accepted. Councillor Wilhelm?
Maybe I just missed a comment, but I thought that first one was not gonna be on the 18th. It was
This
gonna
is
be
the first, we're fixing that in a second here.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Stay tuned. It's a procedural thing, so.
have council meeting.
Okay, so the motion's accepted. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? That is carried. Next one is gonna be now to move the the January 18th meeting to January the 16th.
I'll make the motion to move the January 18th meeting in 2023 to January 16th, 2023 at 5 PM in the Woodlands office.
Excellent. Thank you for that motion, Councillor Cush. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
When are we going to?
Any opposed? That's carried.
So that we're going.
John,
Yes?
sorry, I should have voiced this during any discussion. So we've now established a new rhythm that works for everybody. One of the other things that we were talking about was trying to have some meetings in Fort Assiniboine. And is that something that we'll just talk about as we go?
Well, the procedural bylaw, I think, says that we hold meetings in Fort Assiniboine when there's,
As required.
right, that was when there's things going on at council that are to do with Fort Assiniboine.
Okay.
We'll get up there and do the meetings there.
And so,
There's quite an expense to actually going to Fort Assiniboine all the time, and it's lousy because one of our councilors has to, well, two of our councilors have to drive quite a distance like this, but if we do the meetings up in Fort Assiniboine, we have to take, what, 6 staff? 6, 7 staff, and then there's,
Minimum 4.
yeah, mileage overtime, so there's a bit of an expense. Councilor Dean?
yeah, and I appreciate that. I guess I was just looking from a procedural point of view. Would we move that, say, the meeting prior? Would be, we anticipate upcoming agenda items that would affect that area, so there'd be an agenda item allowing us to move it over.
That's how it's structured, yeah. So when we're dealing with, land use bylaws or
Sure.
some kind of amendment to something that's really dealing with the fort, then
Yeah.
that was the
Okay.
idea.
Thank you.
So, Your Worship, members of council, for example, the tentative motion that you haven't voted on, Councillor Cush indicated the Woodlands County office. We are scheduled, or we would like to schedule that meeting in the Fort Assiniboine office because we have the Pride Valley areas.
There's an aggregate application
Yeah,
Okay.
for a public hearing.
Yeah. For a public hearing.
I'll accept it as a friendly amendment. You
Uh,
go to the Ford office instead of the Woodlands office here.
Oh, on the 18th? Sorry, 16th. Okay.
We voted
We've already voted on it, it's gone, so.
Yeah, and he did say the county office, the motion was
But yeah,
county
the county
office.
office. So the
He did
county
say
office
county,
would be
so
there.
we're
Didn't say
okay.
Whitecourt.
I'm just informing you, and that's where it's gonna be.
Okay. And we've got a few meetings before that one comes up, so. We got one on the 21st or something, or Christmas party, I forgot, yeah. Okay, so that deals with item 7.2. 7.3, this is a draft policy, we saw this at governance and priority on council remuneration. Mr. Frank.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, at your last governance and priority, council had a discussion in regards to your remuneration policy, and we believe that we've corrected some of the clauses that might create us some questions on how we deal with it from an administration perspective. We took out the Pembina Hills, and we've indicated in the section under the workshops, conventions, conferences, workshops outside of the municipality would cover that, and you would get that per diem. So that doesn't change the way that we've done previous business. And then the other thing is the RMA clause in the line above it indicates that they're exempt from your professional development, your conventions, both of them, the spring and the summer. And then the new numbers effective January 1st is the other change. And for some reason, my thing isn't opening up.
So, just for clarification, was the Pembina zone meeting, that was supposed to be taken out of the professional development or not?
No,
What? It's written, the only one that's not taken out of the professional development is RMA. If I get the writing correct. Well, no, that's in your preamble, not the actual policy. I just can't remember the discussion. Did we have the Pembina zone meeting was part of the,
we don't charge it as part of your professional development. It's, I believe the word that we say excluding the spring and fall conference enhances the role. Maybe If we do need to add something in regard to that, we would then have to,
Mr. Frank,
yes,
section 2.8
is it 2.8?
outlines that conferences and conventions are a claimable per diem.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Any other questions on this? Counselor Wilhelm.
I'll motion council adopts amended policy 1019, council remuneration effective January 1st, 2023, pending the adoption of the 2023 operating budget.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Counselor Wilhelm. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, we have a subdivision approach, item 7.4, subdivision approach review. And as soon as this loads, Mr. Bashan.
Worship members of council, request was received for a second approach in a subdivision lot, which was presented to council at the October 26th meeting. Council passed the motion directing administration to provide a review of all approach content in the design guidelines, construction standards. Administration contacted our neighboring municipalities. We had 5 reply. Of those 5, 4 only allow one approach per internal subdivision lot. 1 does allow a second approach if the lot is bigger than 10 acres. So the Woodlands County design guidelines are consistent with our neighbors, and the recommendation is that council accept subdivision second approach review as information.
Okay. So, Councilor Prestige.
Make a motion that council accept subdivision second approach review as information.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Oh, we have a funding request for the Fort Assiniboine Bicentennial item 7.5. Bert, you're gonna take us through this. Floor is yours.
Good morning, council. You'll probably remember at our last council meeting, we had a delegation from the Fort Assiniboine Bicentennial Committee, and within their presentation was a request for funding. So administration has done some work based on that request, and in front of you is the RFD with the motion that a maximum of $75,000 be allocated to the Fort Assiniboine Friendship Club to assist with covering the costs of the Fort Assiniboine Bicentennial events in 2023. And with where we're at with the 2022 budget, the recommendation is that the first portion of funding of $25,000 could be paid from the 2022 budget.
Okay, thank you. I just have a quick question on the structure of this. So is this a, is there a fundraising effort going on and we're backstopping this, or is this a $75,000 allotment?
So the budget allotment would be for $75,000. They are in the process of doing a corporate partnership piece and looking at donations, as well as at our Bicentennial committee meeting that we had last week. We want to make sure that we get a full valuation of all of the volunteer time that's being put in as well. So they do have a SIP grant application that's in for up to a maximum of $75,000, and that's a matching grant. So off of that SIP grant, depending as to how it resolves itself, there could be some monies there for them to be able to use it and to draw from. That's where the recognition of the volunteer time and all of that is important, because that can be put towards the in-kind contribution for the SIP grant. We also have had interest from at least 4 identified corporate partners so far that are interested in putting in either in-kind or cash. And the intent really is for council to backstop whatever funds that they can't raise or that we can't generate through some of the event income. Now, the intent is for all of the events to be free to the public, but there could be event income from maybe some sales of merchandise and some things like that. So the budget is in development, and I'll defer to Councillor Coulton if he has anything else to add. He attended the meeting and he's had several discussions as well.
Okay. Councillor Coulton?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that happened at the Bicentennial meeting was there was a lack of understanding that we cannot, as a county, be the ones that apply for the CIP grant. It has to be done through the nonprofit, so that's how you leverage those funds, which is kind of a normal procedure. And I did say to the Bicentennial group that this is a partnership, and if we backstop this, it's as important as it can be that we fundraise and do as much as we can to make sure that at the end of the day that it is a partnership. And quite frankly, at the council level, if we do come up a little bit short, that is a possibility, and that's something we have to accept when we make this decision. But if we look at the history of the celebration, I think it was in 2017, was that they raised more than enough to cover, and they actually ended up, from the stuff that they covered, putting money back into some, I guess we would call it legacy stuff in the community. So I don't see there being an issue with the fundraising. The only one that's in question, which we have no real control over, is the CIP.
Councillor Dean?
So, a question through the chair, back to Bert. Do you have an idea of approximately how much sweat equity would qualify for the matching part of the SIP grant? Would it be 20,000, 10,000?
Based on what we did a quick calculation on at the meeting with the two events that are identified so far, the 1 week in June requiring a minimum of, it was 6 volunteers per day for 6 hours, 15 volunteers per day for 6 hours. And then based on the meetings that we've had so far and that we continue to anticipate, we estimate just in volunteer time and what we've identified so far would be around that $20,000 mark.
And the grant itself, is there a maximum amount that you can?
The maximum grant amount is 75,000.
No, for the sweat equity
Yeah,
portion.
so the sweat equity portion would be, we could do a maximum of 75,000.
Really?
Because my understanding is that it's a 1-to-1, but we will do our best to work with the friendship group to make sure that we understand. The grant application is in, but we have the ability at this point to provide further information. And so coming out of the last meeting, we were further developing the budget, still defining some of the event, and we still have more information to submit on that grant part of it. So I'll say that it's a work in progress.
Councillor Dean?
And just one other follow-up question. I really like the language used, Peter, the partnership, and that's how we can help build communities and be part of the community. I'm a little uncomfortable, though, just how this is structured in terms of, okay, are we sort of looking over the volunteer's neck with an expectation that X is going to be returned back to us? I don't know how that looks. Or is this, or are we being asked essentially to grant 75,000, which I don't have a problem with, but our expectation is that they would sort of match it, so the celebration would be something that everybody can really, really be proud of. So is it a loan coming back, or are we just saying, here's your money, but work on it?
Councillor Coulton?
I think the conversation actually was around exactly that point, was that the Friendship Club, because they are the ones that are doing the paperwork, we have to have a separate bank account, we have to have that oversight. But the reality of it was that currently they do not have any funding to do any of the booking, to do any of that stuff, so that it was called seed money, I believe. And, which is, you know, basically saying that, yeah, we're in the process of returning it. But like anything else, is that they're gonna do their job to try to, the conversation was that wouldn't it be nice if we could have that seed funding and then just say to the county afterwards, you know, here's your $75,000 back. That's the mindset that's there. Now, given the circumstances, when we approve this, we have to understand if we're $10,000 short, we're gonna be on the hook for that. And then we have to ask the question, okay, what value was that $10,000 to the social economic and the community building that Councillor Dean talks about? And so let's not say that this is doesn't have any risk involved, and it does. And I see the group being very, very focused on, and I think that the CIP grant also allows corporate donations and stuff to be part of that matched funding. And they're actually waiting for us to have a budget because we did go past the deadline, but they view this as being a very important project. So the short answer is, yeah, there's a risk.
Councillor Cush.
I just want to kind of, like, I agree with Councillor Goodwin, like, there is definitely going to be risk to this. So one thing I look at, you know, if we give the money out and say funding doesn't come in or whatever that they're expecting and we end up short, it's not like we're, you know, it's not like we're giving extra to a hall or whatever for a, you know, one of their events or something to do. Like, this is something that, you know, we're celebrating the history of the area. This is a, you know, bicentennial event. This is a large, you know, should be a large celebration for the area and for, you know, the province even, for what we've done and the history behind this. So it is, for me anyways, this is a risk that I'm willing to take. If this ends up on the county for a little bit down the road, I still think that it's a worthwhile event to help backstop.
Councillor Dean.
Yeah, and to that end, what I'm seeing, the recommendation is saying that the first 25,000 is coming out of our current budget, so it's not unallocated expense. It's an expense that's been shifted around. I would be in favor of not only granting it, but not having the expectation and wording this somewhere in the motion that all of that 75 has to, you know, we're expecting it back. If we want to, maybe perhaps we can grant 75 and the first 25 is entirely forgivable with the expectation that the other 50 is they're working on to come back.
Councillor Cush.
To the chair, to Council D, or would it be beneficial just to give the recommendation the way it is, and if there is a shortfall, deal with it when that comes up? We could make a motion on the short, this way at least there's no, you know, if they're working towards it and they come short, they can come back to us versus us saying that, you know, we'll forgive this much and, you know, maybe they don't work towards that. Not saying that they won't, I mean, they're doing what they can, but I think it might be a little bit better to leave it kind of open-ended and then we can deal with that when we get towards the end.
Councillor Dean.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, and I respect that. I disagree with it in that I think that, as you mentioned earlier, you know, this is a bicentennial, and where else in this province are they celebrating something as old as that? And we don't really have a lot of skin in the game at this point, so I don't have a problem with granting 25 and having 50 as the backstop. I'm fine either way, you know, but I just want to express my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Prestige.
Through the chair to council and administration. We have to remember this is not just for Assiniboine. It's gonna be events in Blue Ridge, and it carries on into different communities too, all the way up to Athabasca, I think, so we're just a link in it. So I think it's, we must do it.
Councillor Koken.
I really appreciate this discussion because this is kind of the comments and the different views that I got from residents who are either in favor or not in favor. And I think that it's the responsibility of the Bicentennial group and the people that we've designated to be the bankers in this to have a constant update as we go through the process, that will come back to council to tell them where we're at, what was approved, because I think that is the way that partnership should go. And then if council sees some issues with it, there could be some recommendations.
Excuse me, Councillor Cush.
To chair the CAO, Frank, if we were to, say Councillor Dean said, basically grant the 25,000 to them, non-refundable, and leave the rest 50 to come back to their grant funding, what would that look on this year's budget?
Your worship, through to Councillor Cush, in regards to the impact, it would come from accumulated surplus or your non-collectible allowance that has approximately, it's not quite $3 million because we have used some up for the gas fuel charges earlier this year. So, but that's where the funds would come from. So your accumulated surplus at the end of the year, there would be it'd be a financial impact of 25,000, but not a hardship.
I'll ask another question then of admin. So when is this bicentennial exactly?
Starts on the 6th of July in the fort. It starts here, and the celebration ends, as far as the bicentennial celebration ends on the 9th of July in Fort Assiniboine. But the precursor is the schools. In June, I believe, they're putting on a big thing where a whole pile of schools are going to come to Fort Assiniboine to also be part of that component. So, and I don't see that one being a big expense, but it's a huge benefit because it's sponsored through the school system.
So the way I see this is, and I know from having been involved in clubs that have tried some fairly, when you get a small club, 75,000 is a big chunk of change to try and deal with. I know from the fundraising that I've done and some of the events that I've been involved in, we weren't necessarily looking for a grant or money out of the county necessarily. What we needed was a backstop. We needed the ability to try. We needed the ability to try something like this and put an event on without the risk. And from the way I understand the structure of this to be written, is that the county is basically assuming the risk on this if they can't make the funding commitment. So I don't, I like the way it's structured, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but that's the way I see the structure of this. And I like the way it's structured now. And if we want to put actual cash into this, I think there might be an opportunity as the date starts to approach. So is that a fair assessment, or?
I think that's a fair assessment, because I think as once they start booking, then and they have their strategy and plan in place, And this one goes, like we said, it goes beyond the borders. I've already had conversations, and I'm going, I believe, on 11th of January to a meeting with Lesser Slave and the Sawridge Band. So there's that process that's going to happen. So then once we have that in place, then we can, the group is already looking at having a designated group, and Athabasca will be their responsibility. We won't get involved in that. We're just going to get involved in raising the funding for the major event, which is going to occur between Whitecourt and Fort Assiniboine in Woodlands County.
Okay, sorry.
The second part of it is that I view this in the conversations that I have with the organizational group no different than a grant fund. If we raise all of the funds that are necessary for that event through the efforts of the organization, then we don't need the grant, right? So it's like any other grant. It either can be then talked about as doing a project that may come out of it, or that money goes back to the source. And I believe that's the discussions that we've had, Bert. So there's been a lot of responsibility put on the organizational group.
Councilor Preston.
Through the chair to council and administration. I like the way it's written. We have the group here. They were totally okay with how it's written. We could if they have a hard time raising funds, we could end up covering 35,000. So the way this is written, to me, works. If we want to change it at the end, it's up to us. And with that, I'll make a motion that council allocate a maximum of 75,000 to the Fort Assiniboine Friendship Club to assist with covering the cost of the Fort Assiniboine Bicentennial events in 2023, with the first portion of funding totaling 25,000 paid from the 2022 budget.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Preston. That motion's accepted. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Kind of did it all ahead of the motion on this one, but nothing further. I see no hands. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. That brings us on to one that came up the other night at our budget discussions. This is the Whitecourt Curling Club presentation and request for funding. Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, the May 11th, you received a presentation from the Whitecourt Curling Club, essentially asking for $20,780 to assist with their upcoming season that they're already undertaken, and the information is provided for council, and you can either have this debate here today or tomorrow at your budget.
Councilor Willow.
I have a question for either for council or administration. Are there other curling clubs within Woodlands County? Is there Fort Assiniboine, etc.? There's one in Fort Assiniboine.
I think it's through the X.
No, they're separate on their own. Yeah, the curling club in Fort Assiniboine, they're separate.
Okay. And is that the only community that has a curling club in Woodlands?
I believe so.
That is correct.
Okay. I guess second question then is with regards to the requested money, some of it be coming out of the budget in 2022 and 2023. I mean, that 12,193 that was initially asked for out of 2022, is that something we have room for in the current 2022 budget, or is it something we would shift into 2023?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, like the previous motion or question by Councillor Cush, you could take the funds from your accumulated surplus that we anticipate that you will have at the end of the year. Right?
Oh, thanks. Councilor Cush, sorry.
Through the chair to CEO Frank, my question I had before in regards to this, and it still stands, is we have other ice rinks and stuff that we fund, and we run them through, I believe it's policy 5002, and could be wrong with the number, but it's the one that lays out how we fund like our ice plants or halls or anything when it comes to utilities and all the other asset stuff. Have we looked at, you know, how this fits or, you know, amongst that policy? Or are we gonna do this as a one-off?
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor Cush, I would assume this is a one-off because we've never funded recreation service. That's not true because the Ski Hill is a corporate sponsor, so we don't fund them. And
Capital grant funding is the one they're referring to.
yeah, no, I know, but we regularly provided capital funding grants to organizations within the town of Whitecourt. And I don't believe so. Now, we have in the past, and I'm recollection of the mountain bike parking lot, did we not provide in-kind work there? Yes, we did in-kind work there.
Just a follow-up, like with, I know when you look at the ice rink in the fort, when it falls under our policy, like we pay so much for it, we pay, you know, and depending on their usage and, I guess like volunteer hours and work and everything on that, like we run it all through there.
Yeah.
Right, all through that policy.
Your worship, through to Councillor Cush, yes, there is an operating grant for the Fort of Assiniboine Ag Society who operates the arena. Yeah, and the curling club for the Fort of Assiniboine is also part of that as well, right? Separate, but is run through the operating grant. Yeah.
Councillor Prestich.
Through the chair to the administration. I can't remember if this was gonna be just a one-off time for them, or is this gonna turn into a yearly ask?
So if I could clarify, if I remember the presentation, the Whitecourt Curling Club has been in the past very effective at fundraising, maintaining their operational funding and their everything. I don't think they've ever asked for in the history funding from the county. I don't know about the town, but from the county they haven't asked for funding. It was meant to be a one-off. This was a lot of the activity, I shouldn't say activities, well, I guess activities that didn't occur due to COVID and some of the really strange scenarios that we've lived through in the last couple of years. So they affected their ability to fundraise, they affected their ability to generate revenue on kitchen rentals, on all kinds of things. It just completely cut them off at the knees. And I don't think this is unique to the curling club. The one thing that I did note during the presentation was how I really appreciated the fact that the curling club was actually, they were looking for this, to my recollection, they were looking for this to be a one-time thing, and they were also looking for, they just wanted to keep liquid so they could keep going through this time. So I think as long as, in my opinion, as long as it's communicated that this is a one-time type of thing, I think we're okay. But I just, what makes me nervous is some of the third-party stuff that we have coming up through ICF, and I don't want to set a precedent. And so we'd have to be careful with that, is all. Councillor Cush.
And I don't want to make it sound like I'm against funding the club. It's a good club. It does provide a lot of service for the residents and stuff around here. But you know, to your point, coming through COVID, we had some of our ag societies in the halls, and when we run through the policy, when they were putting in their numbers and stuff, when they came back, they had to come to council because a bunch of them were getting nothing. No operating grant, no anything from the county, and that was their rentals were down, everything was down, and I think we came back, we took a look, and we gave it as another one-time shot off the policy, and I believe it was $5,000. It wasn't a lot of money that we gave them, and it was the same thing, their rentals were down, their kitchen rates, their everything, and we didn't offer them $20,000, and these are, you know, buildings and stuff in our municipality that were also highly affected, that provide lots of services and stuff for residents in the area too. I mean, like I said, I'm not against funding this and trying to help them out. I agree, you know, like we should do something, but I also don't wanna get what we're offering because they were in a rough time, 4 times more of what we were giving some of our other halls that were also in a rough time.
Councillor Wilhelm.
I wasn't part of those meetings, so I guess my question with regards to that comment was, were those other halls asking for $20,000 or were they just asking for any kind of funding?
Those other kind of halls through the operational grants that we have here, they're based off of utilities and, you know, we're working everything that's put into the hall and the usage and stuff. And when they put everything into our application form and they came back and the county said, no, I'm sorry, but you don't qualify for funding. And that was through the COVID years too. And then we brought it back here and we looked at the policy, gave another one off because through COVID, you know, rentals and stuff were down. And I believe it was a $5,000 one time that we gave them.
Councillor Dean.
Listening to the conversation and, you know, everybody's making good points. The ratio that they're asking for their deficit, if you go through that presentation that they provided, they talk about, you know, monies that they need to operate from April to September, and then September the balance of the year. But typically when there's a joint ask to both municipalities, the ratio is used. Now, this club may not know that, may not be aware of that. But I think that, you know, as you say, Councillor Cush, you know, those facilities in Anselmo and Blue Ridge and Port Assiniboine are integral parts of their community, and those residents use those. There's lots of residents in Divisions 2, 3, and 4 that use that facility as well. So that, you know, that's a parallel. But I don't like the precedent we set if we say we'll fund 50% of the deficit. And that might sound a little harsh to anybody that's listening, but I just think we need to be consistent with our cost sharing.
Councillor Prestige, and we don't have to make this decision today. We can push it off to not push it off, but sorry, poor choice of words. We can ask for some further information and get it at the next budget meeting. Would that be fair?
That'd be tomorrow, your worship.
You guys have got nothing to do.
Is that correct, Heather? I mean, Joe?
Councillor Prestige.
Through the chair to council and administration. When they did the presentation, I did bring up the fact that we should be doing the cost sharing as per population. They were not aware of it, so, you know, maybe that's something we should reach out to them to see if that's okay. And like, I don't really like to do the 50-50 either. We kind of have a policy on how we do that. I think we should keep with the policy.
Spent a few $100,000 defining that ratio, actually.
Councillor Wilhelm.
So what was that rate, 22%?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, somewhere in around there. It's if you go, and again, this is the tricky part is you're digging into numbers that have been used 12, 13 years ago. Some of the agreements that have. So I kind of don't want to go down that road. Sorry, Councillor Prestige, go ahead.
Through the chair to council. Something we might look at is if they have a list of their people that use the club, what is the ratio of the people that use it?
Council Dean?
With all due respect, that ratio can change from year to year.
Mr. Frank, you're about to find a way out of this. A way forward, I mean. Go ahead.
Well, your worship, members of council, and again, I'm not, I believe the new number that we are anticipating is 18%, but using a 22% deficit for that would be based on, would be about $9,100, $9,150 to round it up. And so that number is current. The other way of looking at it, and I know that this council and the previous council wanted to move to a corporate sponsorship and saying, you know, we don't have a problem putting our name and funding something that, whether it's in the town or in the county, but we need our name on that, and whether it's at the end of the rinks or the score signs, scoreboards, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councilor Wilhelm.
It's been quite a while since this request has happened, and I wonder if before we make any kind of decision on this, we should reach back out to the curling club and get a status update on how they're doing. And then we could potentially have another discussion around that. Like maybe they're not in as dire straits as they were before, and the ask is not quite as significant. And then maybe that discussion around the corporate sponsorship could start as well. I think that might be the best way to go, rather than their situation could have totally changed since we last saw them.
That's true, and the only reason that I didn't really think of the corporate sponsorship idea was because this was a one-time thing, but even being one, you can be a corporate sponsor one time, so. Do you want to make a motion to that effect, Councilor Wilhelm? Councilor, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that administration reaches out to the Whitecourt Curling Club to further discussion on their ask from the previous meeting. Does that make sense?
Is that gonna work for you?
Well, your worship, and just in discussion, is from a budget perspective, being the meeting tomorrow, is council going to put some funds in? And again, you can have that discussion tomorrow as well, right? Is just from that perspective, there's two things that you're going to end up when they come back to you, or when administration comes back with the information. It still doesn't give you a decision of whether it's in the budget or not.
I think that if you listen to the discussion around the table, you would be able to, if we decide to go ahead with it, you're probably looking at that around that 9,000 mark, based on the percentage. If I'm doing a little of the forget that Johnny Carson character we used to do, the Red Mines, but and maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, tell me. Councilor Cush.
Through to Mr. Frank, would administration have time to possibly reach out to them this afternoon and just find out what their corporate sponsorship levels are worth? And then bring that back to our budget discussions tomorrow?
Your worship, members of council, we can try. That's all we can do. And unfortunately, if they're available, or we can get a hold of the right person that has the information. Yeah.
Councilor Dean.
So,
And keep in mind, we still have a motion on the floor.
yeah, that's actually what I was, can you read the motion back, please?
So you wanted us, first of all, to reach out to the club to ask for that percentage difference amount, because numbers might have changed, and then, or it's to see if they could possibly have corporate sponsorship.
No, that was
No.
Counselor Dean.
So could I suggest a friendly amendment to the motion and ask administration to come back to the budget meeting tomorrow with information from the club considering their corporate sponsorship opportunities and/or their financial picture with respect to their ask from April. Does that cover the bases?
I think that's yes, that's a friendly amendment enough. It basically reshapes the motion entirely. If the original mover of the motion accepts it, so.
Yes, I suppose so.
I
Wasn't very
need you to
friendly, but I'll
repeat the
take it.
last part of that, please. So,
Just say it again so
yeah,
that we can.
I have
record it,
ask admin to come back to the December 8th budget meeting tomorrow.
With, after contacting the club to investigate potential corporate sponsorship opportunities and clarification of their financial picture with respect to the funding request from April.
So how I captured this motion is that council direct administration to reach out to the Whitecourt Curling Club for further information and the information before to the 2023 budget discussion.
That's,
Is that the motion you?
well, there
you
was a
and
specific in
put
there
together?
about corporate sponsorship, but. You got it?
I don't know, something went off in my ear, sorry.
There's a
And
lot
I
of,
don't believe the corporate sponsorship, it was just additional information, wasn't it enough?
Counselor Dean, well, we got a little tripped up on our motions here, this happens. Counselor Dean, go ahead.
So, speaking to the friendly amendment, what I was trying to capture was Councillor Cush's question, which was specific to corporate sponsorship opportunities. And the discussion around the table was, has their financial picture changed? So leaving it open-ended like that, if we don't get the information that we're asking, then we're gonna be asking ourselves why we didn't ask you the right question or ask you to do the right thing.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, and again, the reason why I say direct administration to seek additional information, that broad motion allows us to gather the information that council is in the discussion, i.e. corporate sponsorship, their financial position, number of memberships, like what's their split, you know, and again, some of that information may be available, or they may have to delay it.
I'm just trying to make sure if we can accept this as a friendly amendment to, because it's so
Or you
enormous.
could, or they
I
can
could ask for
withdraw,
withdrawal.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm in my meeting procedure bylaw here, so. Withdraw. Amendment. Yeah, this, like, we've reached the point where that friendly amendment is not, it's so broad and encompassing that it would be easier if the original mover withdrew the motion and then Councillor Dean tabled a separate motion.
I will remove my motion.
Withdraw would be the.
Withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wilhelm. Okay, Councillor Dean, so your polished motion, then we'll get it on the floor last time.
Okay, so I would move that we, council directs administration to reach out to the Whitecourt Curling Club and seek information on corporate sponsorship opportunities and get a clarification of their current financial picture with respect to their financial request from April of 2022.
Okay. That motion is accepted. Counselor Cush.
I just propose a friendly amendment,
Yes?
just to, and be brought back for a December 8th
Thank you.
budget meeting.
Accepted as friendly? Okay. Any, are we clear on this now?
Your worship, members of council, we're already on it.
Excellent. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Your
Counselor
worship,
Wilhelm.
Can I request a quick bathroom break?
I think that's a great idea. We do. This is a good spot for a break.
I was just gonna
Let's
say
come
your-
back at 11. We'll make a 15-minute break. Sorry?
CAO was trying to say something.
no,
Uh,
no, I'm good. I'm sorry.
I think he's just adding some color.
Never heard that.
We are adjourned.
Mr. Nikita, Okay, so we're back from our break. We'll jump right in at 8.1 new business, and that's the, excuse me, Airport Vicinity Protection Plan. And that is going to be Joe Sludwig. So you want to take us through this RFP, Joe?
Sure. Your worship and council, what administration did in roughly the end of October was we let out a request for proposal for the requirement of an airport vicinity protection plan, as well as with review of our land use bylaw, setback requirements at the airport, as well as a transportation network with respect to the aggregate and how it may come through the airport area. 15 proponents reviewed it on ACP, and only 2 proposals were submitted. Myself and the airport manager, we reviewed the 2 proposals that came in. Significant difference between the proposals, as you can see, as far as the budgeting goes. However, the one proposal is very in-depth, and it's exactly what we're looking for as far as being able to make eventually application to the province and to the federal government under the Municipal Government Act, so that we have more authority at the airport as a municipality. So yeah, it was a very comprehensive review that HM Aero is going to provide us. It covers all of the aspects of an EPA, such as NEF contour lines. We got land use compatibility. They'll look outside of the airport as well as inside the airport as to the uses, heights, electronic facilities, any emissions, if we've got industry out there that maybe is creating emissions, they'll look at that. Bird hazard, there'll be consultation with Transport Canada as well as the province. They'll look at our development process as well and give us some guidelines on that. They'll also look at the outer obstacle assessment, which is again development outside of the airport itself, and what kind of an area do we need as far as protection so that we don't detriment the airport and its use. So administration is just recommending to go with the proposal from HM Aero that was submitted. It did come under budget. We had 110 in the 2022 budget for a bid of $95,767. That includes disbursements. It does exclude GST.
Okay. Any questions to admin on this? As I was going to ask are you the chair of the airport advisory? Did you go through this at the airport advisory?
Yeah, we had discussed, oh, wait a minute. No, it came to us at council, so I don't believe the airport advisory committee has looked at this.
Sorry, and you had your hand up as well. So.
Yeah, well, it's just the same thing that I said back in October, that as we want to move the operations in the airport forward, and we want to keep all our options open, this is just a necessary piece. It's expensive, but it's necessary.
Councillor Cush.
I agree, and it helps kind of protect the area and stuff around the airport and, keep it from getting shut in. So I want to make a motion that council awards the Airport Vicinity Protection Area Plan proposal to HM Aero for the submitted bid of $95,767, including disbursements and excluding all applicable taxes.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. I went off my page. I'm gonna be a mess. I have no internet. Where are we here? 8.2. So this is going to be our bridge file, tender funding. Joan, that's you as well, or? Okay,
That is shown.
go ahead.
Me.
Andre? Sorry, I don't, because of my internet.
Your worship, members of council, the 2021 bridge maintenance tender was awarded in 2021 with the work scheduled to take place during the winter, which would be in 2022. And the funds, the work was supposed to be funded from the 2021 budget and forwarded to the 2022. In 2022, we had $430,000 for bridge maintenance work. Our engineers did not identify any work that had to be done in 2022. And in September 28th, 2022, the RFD for the replacement of the 2 bridge culverts on Veterans Avenue and Blue Ridge was brought to council to be funded from the 2022 bridge maintenance budget. However, the funds from the 2021 bridge maintenance budget, which were supposed to be carried over, did not end up being carried over. They were placed in the 2021-22 accumulated surplus. That is the background. The work at the 2 bridge culverts was completed. There was a balance in the 2022 bridge maintenance budget of $135,650, which means there's an outstanding balance owing of $264,350 for the 2 bridge culvert replacements. In discussions with the interim director of corporate services, Andrew World, recommended that the required funds are available through the 2021-2022 accumulated surplus, which is where the 2021 bridge maintenance funds were allocated to. So the recommendation is that council directs administration to transfer funds in the amount of $264,350 from the 2021-2022 accumulated surplus to the 2022 bridge maintenance budget to fund the outstanding balance for the BF 72373 and BF 85319 replacement tender. So to make it short and sweet, 2021 monies should have been brought over to 2022. They were not. 2021 work was funded out of the 2022 budget, which means we're short $265,000. And that money was put in the accumulated surplus, not carried over.
So we're not technically short, we're in the overall budget, we're short in that one bridge fund because it didn't get carried over correctly, it got deposited in the accumulated surplus and everything. So now you want to move it from the accumulated surplus back into the bridge maintenance so we can spend it on the bridge maintenance that was allotted back in 2021.
That is correct.
Okay. Is that, Councillor Dean?
Yeah. Thanks for that. How much went into the accumulated surplus by?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, I believe it was $420-some thousand.
So basically, the entire cost of this went into the wrong account.
Correct.
Pretty straightforward, almost an accounting thing. Councillor Dean?
I'm just prepared to make a motion that council directs administration to transfer funds in the amount of $264,350 from the 2021-22 accumulated surplus to the 2022 bridge maintenance budget to fund the outstanding balance for the BF 72373 and BF 85319 replacement tender.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dean. Motion's accepted. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Development permit application for natural resource extraction. Item 8.3. And before we go into this, I'm going to recognize Councillor Williams.
I was gonna declare a pecuniary interest for this, for financial reasons. I rent land from, well, this land specifically, so I will leave the room.
Okay, so just record that in the minutes. And we'll turn it over to Joan.
Your worship and council, Woodlands County's received a development permit application, 1560-2022. It is for a class 1 pit and processing, located down in the Pride Valley area on roughly 157 acre parcel with the two combined. The Pride Valley area structure plan outlines that the Pride Valley Aggregate Committee review all development applications prior to coming through to council. So I've included in here information for council's perusal as far as section 118 and section 73 of the land use bylaw, which outlines requirements for a gravel application. Also under, I've included Schedule A, section 9 of the Pride Valley area structure plan, which indicates that a public hearing will be required to provide opportunity for public input on the application. So the aggregate committee recently met here on November 24th with the landowner, the developer, as well as representatives from Alberta Environment and Parks, or I guess they call themselves EPA now, and Alberta Transportation representative. Discussion was held. There were several comments. Really good discussion by the committee with respect to number of pits, or some of the concern was just number of pits in the area. The Pride Valley area structure plan is max 60 acres open, so we're currently well under that. Questions such as who monitors the operations. It is Alberta Environment and Parks. They have a 5-year program in which they review these. Who ensures reclamation of the pit? Again, that falls to the provincial entities. Water monitoring and resident wells was discussed. The applicant has identified in his application and supplied a report with respect to that, and they will participate in a program. There was mention with respect to Range Road 628, which of course is the primary haul route for any of the aggregate entities down there to come out in through, currently through Fort Assiniboine and then to Highway 33. So there was again discussion with respect to the bridge construction. It had been tagged on Alberta Transportation's schedule for several years, and it is deteriorating. Just wanted that brought forward maybe to AT, that it should be on their radar a little more if there's more additional aggregate approved down in that area. As a result, alternate haul routes were discussed, and then gravel royalties was also discussed as well, as to where does that money go that the county receives. Currently, my understanding is it does go just to general revenue. Follow-up maybe that if council chooses, it could be a separate fund in which those dollars go directly back to the community at Fort Assiniboine. But I do know that currently they just go to general revenue. So as a result of that discussion, the committee felt that the application met the criteria and that they had good opportunity to chat about it, and made a motion to forward it to council to proceed with the public hearing process. And I'm just requesting that a public hearing be scheduled for development permit 1560-2022 on January 60th at 5:15 p.m. at the Woodlands County Regional Municipal Office, council chambers in Fort Assiniboine. And that would be embedded within our council meeting.
Councillor Clukin?
Yeah, through the chair to Joan, one of the things that, is captured kind of in the bullet points that you have here with Township Road and the number of pits. One of the pieces of the conversation that was really, I was really aware of was that we have to also establish, what is the limit that we are going to have as traffic on those roads before we understand completely, because each one of the producers there has contracts, and there's potential of 600 500 loads a day coming out of that area, given the amount of contractors. So the concern of the existing producers was, how are we going to be ensured that we're going to be able to fill those contracts if we don't know for sure what the limit on the infrastructure is going to be? So that was one of the points, and it's kind of captured in the two, the sloughing and the maintenance, and then also the amount of pits in the area and how open they are. But I think it's really important that that portion is addressed in the Schedule B there.
Okay. Councillor Dean?
Thanks, Chair. So question back to Joan. One of the discussion points that's listed in Schedule B talks about wells and the applicant would have monitoring wells. Where would those monitoring wells be located?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean. In the report, it identifies areas, and it's based on a distance. So down in the valley, there aren't very many residences located within proximity to this area, but we do have a couple. So they would put those monitoring wells. They need to approach those landowners to ensure that they want to participate, because they have to actually physically look at those wells as well, to ensure that it's maybe not maintenance issues that are causing their well to be detrimented. And then as part of the program too, is then they put in these monitoring wells in fairly close proximity, more so to the pit. And then if they're drawing too much of the water down and it affects an individual's well, then they of course then would compensate them by whatever means it may be.
So it's the wells are close to the pit then?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Preston?
Yeah, through the chair, to council and administration, we had a very good discussion on this permit. And with that, I'll make a motion that council direct administration to schedule a public hearing for development permit 15-060-2022 for natural resource extraction and processing class 1 pit on northeast 262.5 west of the 5th and plan 0929270 block 1 lot 1 on January 16th at 5:15 p.m. at Woodlands County Regional Municipal Office Council Chambers in Fort Assiniboine.
Catch on the 16th. That motion is accepted. Thank you, Mr. Councillor Prestige. And is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. That'll bring us to draft policies for winter operations.
Your worship, members of council, the revised winter operations policies were presented to the Governance and Policies Committee on September 15th. A request was made that public consultation be held regarding winter operations. 3 public consultation meetings were held, one at the Westward Center, one in Blue Ridge, one at Fort Assiniboine. The overall consensus from the public was that the general public finds the winter service levels adequate and no changes were recommended or suggested. The revised policies take 4 existing policies, combine them into 2, and the recommendation is that council adopts policy 3231 winter operations as presented, that council adopts policy 3232 private driveways plowing and grading as presented, and that council repeals policy 3221 sanding and salting, policy 3222 snow control and grading of private driveways, procedure 3222-01 snow control grading, and policy 3223 snow plowing of roadways.
Councillor Wilhelm.
I'll make a motion that council adopts policy 3231, winter operations as presented.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna have to stay on my game here. That motion is accepted. Any discussion on that motion? I don't see any. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have another policy to be adopted. Councillor Williams.
I'll make a motion that council adopts policy 3232, private driveway plowing and grading as presented.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Councillor Colgan.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council repeals policy 3221, sanding and salting, and policy 3222, snow control and grading, private driveways.
Did you say 3222?
Yep.
Okay.
Procedure for 3222-01, snow control and grading, and policy 3223, snow plowing of roadways.
Okay. Motion on the floor from Councillor Colgan. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And that's the end of that one. So just for anyone who doesn't, at the council level, we, you notice that we passed the new policies before we repealed the old ones. It has happened in the past where they were repealed before they passed, and they wound up without a winter operations policy at all. Well, and that can happen in any policy, so typically we've adopted the procedure that will adopt the new one prior to canceling the old one, just so that never happens. Is that a fair description, Mr. Frank?
Your worship, members of council, that is correct.
Okay. With that, it will bring us to draft policy 3219, amending the road use.
Your worship, members of council, amended policy 3219, road use, was presented to the Governance and Priorities Committee on September 15, 2022. The committee requested that public consultation be held and that a definition of unusual road use be added to the policy. We did have public consultations in 3 areas of the county. The definition of unusual road use was circulated to council with no objection. That forms part of the amended policy. I should point out that along with the road use policy, there is a road use bylaw. We are still populating the bylaw as it's an all-encompassing traffic bylaw. Once that is complete, it will be brought back to council for adoption, which should be end of January or early February. And there has also been discussions regarding road data taking over the administration of our road use request. That RFD should be coming to council on the December 21st meeting. Recommendation is that council adopt policy 3219, road use policy, as amended.
Okay, thank you. Any councillor questions?
Through the chair to administration. On 2.4, it says, if time allows, public consultation and notification will take place prior to an extended haul taking place. I don't really like if time allows, because if somebody comes and says they're gonna be hauling with 50 trucks the next day, there's no time to do public consultation. And that was the whole idea of getting public consultation, was to let the residents know there's gonna be a haul like that. So I would really like to see if time allows taken.
through the chair of Council Prestige. So we left that in for if there's an emergency situation where they have to do a quick haul. We wouldn't have the time to do public consultation, but we should be able to most of the time. This past summer, we had an issue on Range Road 102. There should have been time for a public consultation on that one. However, it didn't happen. But I would say for 99% of the time, there should be.
Councilor Dean?
Through the chair, a question to Councillor Prestige. Could we change that wording and say, now I've lost it, that, so that was 2.4A, right? So instead of saying if time allows, could we say public consultation notification will take place prior to an extended haul taking place, except in emergent situations?
Exactly what I was getting at.
Sure.
Okay. Did you capture that, the admin?
Except in an emergency situation,
Is that
2.4, right?
on 2.4A? Okay. Are we okay with that amendment? Yes? All right. And council wishes to include that amendment? Yes? Okay. The, is there anything further on the policy as far as changes or anything? Other than that, it looks good. Okay, and this kind of comes about that unexpected little haul that happened, so it's not something that happens all the time, but I think it's a really good. It refines the policy in a way, makes it a little more robust, so that people know what's going on in their neighborhood. If there's no other questions on this, I'll accept a motion to approve the policy as amended. Councilor Prestige.
Through the chair, can I just go as amended, or do we have to change the wording?
No, we're fine. The final document will be noted in the minutes
So as amended is fine?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that council adopt policy 3219, road use policy as amended.
Thank you. And any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That item is carried. So that'll bring us to protective services overview. Sheldon.
Through the chair to all council, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to have me here today. I have a presentation which will be up on the screen, maybe in front of you as well on PowerPoint. Before we get to that, just a bit of a background information in regards to protective services. So this position for manager of protective services was established in March of 2021. Before this position was established, the Director of Community Services, which is eliminated, was the main point of contact for all 4 fire departments and the mutual aid partner, Town of Whitecourt. In 2016, a regional fire chief services concept and model study was completed by a third party. During the study, data and information were collected from all 4 county fire departments, Town of Whitecourt Fire. Other sources included municipal affairs, municipal websites, general conversations with other fire and emergency service experts from around the province. During that study, there was a recommendation put forth to establish a full-time county fire chief position or emergency services manager within the organizational structure as soon as the county is able. So in March of 21, a manager of protective services was hired for the position under the direction of Director of Corporate Services. The manager of protective services works closely with all five, four county and one mutual aid fire department on all operational topics such as equipment purchasing, member training requirements, emergency management, and can keep going on there. So myself, Mr. Chef, was hired as manager of protective services September of 2022. I direct report to the CAO, Mr. Frank, on all operational topics, protective services. So just a bit of some background information for you. We'll get into some responsibilities and requirements and other responsibilities that I deal with via the PowerPoint. So, let's see how this works. So protective services, overview. So fire services, I deal with contracted county peace officers. I deal with Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, or FRIA, if you haven't heard of that before, or Fire Smart Alberta. County Health and Safety Department falls under my umbrella. County Director of Emergency Management and County Security. So there, I'm sure you know this information already, but just a quick one here. There's Anselmo, Blue Ridge, Goose Lake, and Fort Assiniboine, which are county fire departments. And again, the town of Whitecourt is a mutual aid department. So for fire services and myself, there's an administration and support, Brenda. We have Station 2 Fort, so just there's a fire chief and a deputy chief for all departments, and any operational topics come from those individuals to myself. Contracted county peace officers, so as we all know, we use a contract out of Lac Saint Anne. They were established and put in place January the 1st of 2020. Currently, they spend 80 hours per month in Woodlands County. The enforcement supervisor reports to myself, and then I take that information to the CAO. And we are Woodlands County is a part of the Public Security Peace Officer Program in Alberta under the Alberta Justice and Solicitor General. As stated already, I deal with FRIA, or Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, Fire Smart Alberta, or Fire Smart Canada. It's a very big program. I'm in meetings with Whitecourt's Forest Division quite often, going through fire protection, fire smart protection around the county and initiatives with them. So it's very, very good work. We have grants through FRIA to do fire smarting, which we are. As stated, the County Health and Safety Department falls under my umbrella as well. So we do have an individual that is in that position as a coordinator. We meet weekly or daily to go over certain topics, health and safety wise, and help that person out as much as I can. We do utilize a software program called WorkHub across the board for all of our employees, contractors as well, and part-time seasonals. It's a very good program that we utilize, and everyone's on board with it. County Director of Emergency Management, myself, still not appointed. Mr. Frank, CAO, is in position right now. That will be changing soon. And the Deputy Director of Emergency Management is the Health and Safety Coordinator. That person in that position is fairly new, so we're just getting that person on board. We do have a tabletop exercise planned for the spring, summer of next year. As stated, I do deal with the security systems for this head office and Public Works. We use a company out of Leduc called Skyline Securities, and they're very good, have a main point of contact there that helps me with all security issues programs. So just a short little presentation on an overview of, the position itself. I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions.
Oh, I'm just gonna ask one real quick. The FRIA grant that you were talking about, so that's a recent application for a grant. I think it was 60,000, was it?
In that ballpark, yeah, it was before my time. It was put together before my time with FRIA.
Right.
Yeah, that was. It's now closed. That grant is now done. We completed our operational requirements for that grant, and we will be putting in with discussions with the CAO more paperwork and documentation for another FRIA grant moving forward. So that grant that you're talking about was for wildfire preparedness strategy and wildfire preparedness guides, which they are now completed on my desk, which will be now put out to the fire departments and council and the CAO.
Right. Okay. Councilor Wilhelm.
Just a quick question to you for our contracted county peace officers. You get to see a little bit more of the data that we do and feedback from that program that we're doing there. Do you find that 80 hours is sufficient for our requirements in this region? Is it something we should look at increasing in the future? Like, I mean, I haven't heard anything specifically negative about a lack of coverage, but I'm just wondering, with regards to that, is that 80 hours enough to cover what our security needs are in Woodlands?
Right, through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm?
Wilhelm.
That's right. Right now, there is talk about upping that hours, but as 80 hours sits, there has been good communication back from that department to me that they do spend quite an amount of time in Woodlands County. And if we have any issues in any part of the county, we reach out right away and they deal with that. So that 80 hours is nice. Now, on the flip side, it would be nice to have that hours upped 100%. More presence is important, I feel, to have that security level, right, within Woodlands. But of course, there's a cost to that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just know with that type of situation, proactivity is better than reactivity, right? Like, if we're just getting feedback, we're being reactive to bad situations as opposed to preventing them from happening in the first place, so.
Yeah, through the chair to Councilor Wilhelm, yeah, and you can put as many hours as you want towards something. We're not gonna stop everything, right? So stuff's still gonna happen, but as long as we're being proactive and looking at the situation and what arises, and we can deal with that right away, right? So, yeah.
Councilor Dean.
So just a couple of questions. One is, can you just clarify, I think it's slide 2 or 3, the County Director of Emergency Management, is that you or is that the CAO?
Currently, sorry, through the chair to Councilor Dean, currently it's the CAO.
Okay, yeah, thanks, that's what I thought. And then the second question is, I know you've only been here for a couple months since September, but can you give council impression of, fire services, various other things that follow, are you happy with things? Do you want to see great improvement, or is it pretty good status quo?
Through the chair to Councilor Dean, good question. Good communication back from all departments. We typically have officer meetings. I like to have them 4 to 5 times a year, depending on scheduling and whatnot. And that's where all of our operational topics come up. Right? So if there's anything that comes up from members, they bring it forward. Do I want to see improvement? Of course. We always want to improve, right? 3 goals of mine coming up are, so standard operating guidelines, or SOGs. It's operations side of things. It's not policy, but they haven't been brought to the 21st century, put it that way. So that's one of my top goals, is to go through those along with the departments, because it can't just be me.
Sure.
Right? There needs to be feedback from members and officers on the pros and cons, right? Number two is complete inventory across the board. We have a software program that we utilize, FirePro, and on that system, there's a tab for inventory. So each department, I'll be working with the officers and members to upload anything from bunker gear to hoses to nozzles. And of course, that implements the budget right down the road, right? So that's that for sure improvement. And then another one on the top of my list is a regional actual training, fire training plan. Departments in this county are working on different levels of service. And we get that, we understand that, but we need to have a better moving forward plan in regards to training. Because there's a huge liability on department members, myself, moving forward.
Thank you.
And there's a tremendous pressure on the volunteer fire department model at the moment. It's getting tricky, so.
If I may?
Yes,
If I may?
please.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm sure you follow the media out there. CTV has a very good program going right now regarding volunteer fire service across Canada, North America. I have very good friends in Baltimore and Boston, and they're volunteer. Same issues across the board, getting volunteers, right? So it is a struggle, right? You may have 20 on your roster, but per call you might get 3 or 4. So that is 100% up there.
Councillor Cush.
Through the chair, that kind of actually feeds into my next question. I know we had almost like a bit of a recruitment drive in the chamber. Can't even think of what it's called.
Trade fair.
Trade fair, this summer there. How are we looking as far as volunteer? I know we were kind of getting scarce, and I think it was the Goose Lake area. I'm just wondering if our numbers are looking any better or.
Through the chair to Councillor
Cush.
Yeah, good question. So there are pockets out there that are low with members. Now I've been told by the district fire chief that there are members. He has new members that want to, or people, that want to come on board to bring his numbers up, which is really good to see. As you know, the county's always recruiting. We don't put on a special week or it's always across the board, right? So we try and push that out via social media that we can bring on new people to volunteer. There's incentives as well, and that comes with that. But Goose Lake is starting to gain more, and same with the other departments as well.
Go ahead, Councillor Cush.
Another just a follow-up question. In your opinion, kind of coming onto this and seeing this, how do you feel the I guess the dynamics are with the halls? Everybody, do they seem to be working well?
Through the chair to councillors, yes, they seem to be working well. I've heard stories that there was a lot of butting of heads in the past, but what I've seen so far, and I've been on a couple fire scenes with several fire departments, and everyone works together. Everyone understands the chain of command and the ICS model that we must follow. If there's any issues or topics that come up with members butting of heads, I haven't heard of anything myself personally. But if there is, I would hope the officers would bring that forward.
Councillor Fulton.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the standard operating guidelines because, and you have to understand that, sometimes we get into these uncomfortable conversations, and to a certain degree, I have a bias, and I'm not going to bring that up in the conversation because for me, it's more important that we look at the level of service and down the road as to pieces of that level of service and how we look at that. And quite frankly, I think that when I look through the standard operating guidelines, there's huge gaps. And what it does is it erodes the ability of the leadership to actually do their job. And it also would, in a sense, erode the ability of the protective services manager to do his job because there's no clarity there. And so if anybody's wondering who asked for the operating guidelines, it was me. And then I guess the question that council has to answer is that under the Municipal Government Act, the fire chief can be an elected official, but from an administrative perspective, that creates conflict just because of the conversation I'm having right now. And my experience is, has been very negative. Is the collateral damage of not having a clear and concise way of dealing with what you call the butting of heads creates a huge division in a community. And I've been part of that. And I don't want to see one firefighter or one employee of this county being disenfranchised again because there's no ability for us to actually have our leadership have clear direction in how they handle these situations. So I don't want to get into it. I could, but it serves no purpose. But I do want to move the needle. And so for me, it's important that we make a motion instead of just accepting this as information, because we accepted the last overview that your predecessor had as information and nothing happened. So I'm prepared to make a motion that we have a complete review of the SOGs and procedures with all of our fire departments, and that we have a monthly report on the progress of that, so that we get to the end of having that quality of operating guidelines, so we don't see that kind of thing happen. So my motion will read to have a complete review of the standard operating guidelines and procedures done on our emergency services, primarily fire departments, and that we get monthly reports on the progress of that.
Okay. Motion's on the floor, and I'll accept the motion. Councillor Wilhelm.
I just want clarity on the motion. Who's doing the review?
That would,
Yeah, your worship, members of council, if I may speak to the motion, even though I shouldn't speak to the motion, just clarification in regards to what Shelton and Mr. Shemp has been tasked with is a complete review of the SOGs. He has 1 year to complete that, well, now 11 months to complete that. And the motion is fine, the intent is to take the policy that is council approved, is to have a similar policy where the SOGs will be a standard operating guidelines as in procedures which administration will administer and then adjust as required, versus council would do an overall arching policy that says, here's the standard operating guidelines. So, and I think that's an excellent idea about the review monthly that we provide. We can do it monthly. I would suggest bi-monthly, but we're not.
every 2 months, you mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, sometimes
Yeah.
that I thing confuses people. Councillor Dean.
So as I understand the motion is just a request from council to follow through with an administrative plan that's already in effect. Is that right? And okay.
I think the biggest thing would just be adding the monthly, and you want to continue with the monthly motion, or do you wish to defer to the bi-monthly?
It would be, prudent for me to say that would be something that, knowing the conversation, that would be Mr. Shep knows that we want to be updated, so what would suit the administration? What is the best for administration in that?
So at this point, we'll look to administration to say on the, as we go through this, this SOG review that the motion's speaking to, the, I guess the most fruitful use of time and reporting time every 2 months would be your administration's recommendation, Mr. Shep as well, so.
Yeah, your words, members of council, and again, is your business of governance and program and services is part of your meetings, and to have that monthly may not be the best use of your time. Bi-monthly, every 2 months, is we could provide you with that progress, right? Because some of it will get tied down or bogged down in reviewing it with the fire departments as well.
Yeah, that's understandable, and that's why we ask the questions of admin, so we can structure the motions in such a way that they work with the administrative workload and timeline, so.
I will amend that to the bi-monthly.
Okay.
The other thing, so that council is aware, is we're also looking at our fire bylaws as well at the same time, so that will just be part of the update.
Okay, excellent.
Or you may see it on your agenda.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, so we're not gonna take anything from admin unless we need a clarification. Is there anyone else wish to speak to the motion? And the motion has been amended by the mover to bi-monthly, so once every 2 months. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, we're close.
I don't see any hands, so I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried. Okay. So that's and I'll get a motion to accept the report for information as well. Counselor?
I'll make a motion, the council accepts the protective services overview as implemented.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? That is carried. What do we got left here? Landfill budget. We'll take us up to landfill budget and we'll just take it through three.
Your worship, members of council, at the November 21st Whitecourt Regional Landfill Authority meeting, the budget was presented and approved by the board. The requirements are that each municipality has approved the budget for it to move forward. The requested amount from the county in the 2023 budget is within $3,000 of the 2022 approved budget. There's a bit of a typo there. It's not 3,000, it's 33,000. And it's actually $33,000 less than the 2022 budget. Although you will find when we go through the landfill budget for 2023, it's still at the 280 mark. And the reason, 380 mark, reason being that there's an estimation of the commercial tipping fees within the county that is credited to the county. So that's just an estimate. We left it at 380 just to make sure we have the funds there. The recommendation is that council approves the 2023 Whitecourt Regional Landfill budget as presented.
Okay. I notice in the report that they are rebuilding a cap instead of replacing it, so.
Found it was too much money to replace and too long out. It was more cost effective and beneficial to rebuild it to replace it.
Yeah, weird, huh? Okay, any discussion on the budget? Where are we on that scale house, just for giggles? Can I ask that question?
They have a needs assessment gone out on this to try to spec it. I don't think that's come back yet, is my understanding. Yeah, it'll be January when that, so that's not on this budget, won't happen yet.
I'm just curious, because that was like an emergency spend 2 years, was it 2 years ago?
2 years, 2.5 years ago.
And it was $500,000 almost, so 450,000, wasn't it?
First meeting I was
How
out.
they done without it?
I know. Yes, okay. Good news on the 33,000, is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
I was just gonna make a motion the council approve the 2023 Whitecourt Regional Landfill Budget as presented.
Very good. I'll accept the motion. Are there anyone wish to speak to the motion? I just have one clarification question. It's not speaking to the motion necessarily, it's in the comments here. It says the cost share percentages for the authority were changed, and the cost share calculation for the authority versus a lot of the ICF stuff that we have right now, those use two different metrics for the sharing. Do they not?
Yep.
Yeah, your worship,
The answer is yes?
yes, yeah.
Right.
We have an agreement that the arbitrator said is still in place.
Very good. Okay, anyone with further questions to the motion? Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So that brings us to correspondence and information, yes, it's correspondence and information, we don't have any. It'll move us on to reports, so before we get into reports, I'm just gonna ask, we'll take a quick break here as well, just a 10-minute break, so we'll come back at 12:10.
I'm first this time.
the shortest seconds. Okay, so we're back. We end up going into part 10-1. So this is questions and reports from council. We'll start over here, I guess, Mr. Dean, Councillor Dean, sorry.
Well, I have lots to report on, because of course I wasn't here at the last council meeting, but I'll make it brief. So starting on November 2nd, I attended along with Councillor Cush and Councillor Colkin, the regional ASB meeting in Drayton Valley. And at that time, Ryan McLaughlin, who is a new member from my area, was able to attend that, so it was nice to see him there, and I think he's really going to bring value to our board. From the 7th to the 10th, along with the rest of the council, I was in Edmonton at RMA, and spliced into that on the 7th was a quick trip back to Whitecourt to stand on the sidelines in -20 with a 30-kilometer wind and be part of the group that brought the Athabasca Bowl back to Whitecourt. So our high school football team won that championship, and that was a pretty cold experience, but it was also pretty awesome. On the 14th, we were in Fort Assiniboine for our Ag Services Board meeting. The 16th, we had a GMP meeting. And then on the 26th, I was in Yardley, Pennsylvania, along with my wife and lots of family, and attended our oldest son's wedding. And we had a absolutely delightful time there. December 2nd, I had lunch with our new Economic Development Committee member, Kristen Belke. I look forward to the contributions that she's going to bring forward to our ECDev committee. And on the 6th, yesterday, along with everybody else, I was in a budget meeting that looks like we got about halfway through, so looking forward to finishing it up tomorrow. And that's me.
Okay. Any questions to Councillor Dean? I don't see any. We'll move over to Councillor Wilhelm. Thank you, Councillor Dean.
So the only, I guess, big thing that's happened since the last meeting when we did this, we had that needs assessment meeting with, for the community services contractor that's gonna go around and provide needs assessments for the seniors and youth in our community. So it was a really interesting conversation we had as a group. For myself, it started off slow, but as I started asking questions, it started rolling. So very interested to see what kind of data we're gonna be able to get out of that and to further develop our community services items to bring more value to our community. Other than that, besides the budget talks, just wanted to note again that I'm going to be gone from December 26th till January 8th. I'll be out of country, so I will have email access, but anybody's trying to get a hold of me, that's probably the best way to do it, or leave me a voicemail and I'll try to answer it when I get back. And yeah, pretty quiet, so that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Colkin.
Yeah,
I'm
guess-
sorry. I forgot to give question opportunity to Councillor Wilhelm. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Wilhelm? No. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Colkin. My apologies.
Starts off on the 23rd, where I was able to take Reeve Burrow's position in the chair there and sweat a little bit. It was kind of interesting that I did do some preparation, a little bit more than I normally do for a meeting, because I was worried that I would not, make the position as good as Mr. Burrows has in the past. So that was interesting. 24th, we had the Pride Valley Aggregate Committee meeting. It was really, really good discussion. Really enjoyed the fact that the concerns and things that the at-large members brought to the table are pretty much the same as they've been in the past, but there were some ones that were brought to the table by the producers as well. Then I attended the needs assessment meeting with council on the 29th. That was a good meeting. Opened my eyes a little bit more to the depth of work that the municipality does as far as needs go and where we're going with that. Met with the, as school liaison, and had a good discussion with them over the future funding, let them know about the funding that we do with the liaison person with Pembina Hills. Then we had a meeting on the 5th with CFYE, Community Futures, and it had to do with the, there's 10 different municipalities that have money that are still sitting in the account, and they're trying to best address how to apply that money to the way that we move economic development forward in the region. We had our supper budget meeting, of course, yesterday, and that brings us to today, and that's all I did last cycle.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Copeland. Any questions to Councillor Copeland? All right, Councillor Williams.
I actually had a pretty quiet 2 weeks. There was a Pride Valley Aggregate Committee meeting, but I was unable to attend that due to the pecuniary interest. So I missed out on that one, and then I actually missed the needs assessment meeting last week due to some work issues. So I was quiet these last 2 weeks, except last night.
Okay. Any questions to Councillor Williams? Councillor Prestige.
Okay, on the 21st, we had a Whitecourt Regional Solid Waste Special Budget Meeting. So we discussed the budget, which was just passed by our council now. And on the 24th was the Pride Valley meeting. I was quite impressed with the questions and comments that the board asked and spoke about. It was nice to see that we had a rep from Alberta Transportation and a rep from Alberta Environment virtually, but they had some good comments and suggestions. So let's see what happens at our open house. And then 23rd, we had our council meeting. And the 24th, we had our needs assessment here. And like the other two councilors, I thought it was a great conversation. Hopefully we can get something going from it. And then on the 30th, I managed to sit in on part of the conversation at the Blue Ridge Needs Assessment meeting. I was a little disappointed there was only 5 people there, but they had good suggestions, and hopefully we get something out of that. And then from there, I had a meeting with our EDO to discuss the upcoming meeting on the 20th. Get some direction for the meeting. And then on the 5th, we had a CFYE meeting. I should have been in attendance, but some miscommunication, I missed it. But I try not to do that again. And then yesterday, we had a regional solid waste management meeting. And it was just a regular meeting to discuss what's going on at the landfill and what they're gonna be doing with a new site that they're working on. We're trying to cut the cost by using some clay fill that they had there to start another section on the landfill. So if we can do that, it will cut some costs quite a bit. And we should have our needs assessment on the weigh scale and the building at our January meeting. And we're also looking at whether we're gonna do what do they call it? It's not a commission, it's authority. So we've got a project going to see whether it's gonna be better to have an authority or a commission or a hybrid of both. So we're waiting for the engineers to get, or not, consultants to get back on that. And had the budget meeting last night. So that's everything I've done.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Prestige. Any questions to Councillor Prestige? I see one hand going up. Councillor Fulton.
I think that you forgot probably the most important
Oh,
part of
right.
what we did, and I did
Santa
as well,
Claus
and so
parade.
did
Oh, yeah.
the Christmas parade.
Of course.
That was the most fun and was
Oh, it's-
well organized.
It's just a blast every year
Yeah.
when we do that.
It was great. And thank you to Bert and all of the staff that set that up, because I didn't think I could have that much fun, but I sure did.
I didn't think I could be that cold.
Yeah. And to that end, I believe the float won in its category.
Did it? Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I really like the reindeer out over the plow.
Yeah.
We should keep that on all the time.
Yeah, your worship
Sometimes the
members of
windshield
council, I
gets
did actually ask that when they were setting it up, and I said, that'd be interesting if we could go out and do that, and they said it'd be wrecked in about 2 minutes. So we did reach out to see if that could be done.
Councillor Wilhelm.
On that note, there were a few residents that noticed that the names on the plows as we were
Oh.
going by, and they're like, "Hey, I can't remember which one those out
Snow
there."
problemo.
No problemo.
Snow problemo. They're like, "Hey, it's no problemo." So hey, that people are noticing that we put the names on.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions to Councillor Prestige? All right, thanks, Councillor Prestige. Councillor Cush.
Last couple weeks or since the last meeting, a little bit slower. Yeah, had the Christmas parade. It was great. You know, ventured out in the cold there. See lots of people. Handed out a whole bunch of candy. I was actually surprised the volume that we had, and we run short towards the end. So I'll leave that up to our EDO to hopefully, you know, bring more next year if we're giving out that much. We had the budget meeting last night. Had a YRL meeting beginning of the week there too, and again, just passing the budgets and stuff for next year. Nothing really standing out there. And then the landfill, couple meetings there, the budget one, and then the other one just kind of updates and stuff that Bruce went over. Only other thing I want to kind of just mention quickly, in Summer Hall, they do have a kids' Christmas concert, family-friendly event coming up this weekend on Saturday. Doors open up at 6:30. I think they got about 15 or so kids from the community, been, you know, kind of practicing in that choir and singing a bunch of stuff. So if anybody's free, it should be a really good time.
What date is that?
10th. Get the out at the Ensemble Hall. They still have some tickets available online there. So.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
Thanks for that invitation. I've seen that on Facebook. It looks like it should be a cool event. I had a question though for perhaps Councillor Williams or Quilkin. Does the Journey to Bethlehem production still take place at the school?
It's across, it's in Walsh Park.
Okay.
That they go around and then it goes into the back of usually the museum for hot chocolate.
And it's happening this year?
I think it's done now for the year.
Oh, really?
But I can definitely update you on that.
Okay.
Councillor Cook.
Yeah, the other part, like I'm glad you asked that question, because it's something that I forgot. And that is that the lady and husband and wife that own the post office store there, they put up an incredible light show, like it is Candy Cane Lane quality, right on Main Street in Fort Assiniboine, and this is going to be their last year, and they are looking to get rid of all of their stuff and they're willing to give it away. You know, somehow I'd like to see that tradition carry on maybe, and we have that little park beside that, you know, maybe we could,
Museum.
or the museum, whatever. It's just that they have, I don't know how many 100,000 lights there, like it
Yeah.
completely lights up the main street. I don't know what you think about that, Devin, but
Yeah, it's, a lot of people come to that and.
yeah, people
spend-
come from Edmonton.
Yeah,
to
they
see
have
that.
like a, if you ever go through the fort, you just go through it at night or whatever it's on, so it's
Amazing.
pretty, my kids, we go through it probably 3 to 5 times.
Promote that
a
on
year.
our Facebook page?
I think so, I could get some information and pass it on to Greg.
We should, there's some nodding, so yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that.
It's amazing, like, they start decorating in like June, like it's quite a thing that they do.
And they've done that all on their own for the last 10 years, I think.
Their power bill must have
Oh.
been crazy before LED lights.
Okay,
There's one.
oh, Council Dean, sorry.
And just on the note of Christmas lighting celebrations, just another plug, I guess, for Gwen and Richard Dion and for the Christmas decorations that they put on out at their place out on Tower Road. Residents are welcome to come and drive through it, and they just ask for a food bank donation, and so they're making. The food bank donations are considerable from that, and so the food bank obviously benefits, and it's pretty spectacular too.
How long do they keep that open? Like right to Christmas? Or?
Yeah, good question, Peter. Do you know, Corinne?
They go like right till the end, and their hours are till 11 p.m.
Okay.
Okay, Councilor Preston.
Just one more thing, give hats off to the Blue Ridge Community League and our library. On Saturday, they did a community get-together. There was a bunch of kids skating on the rink, and they had crafts for kids inside the library. They had a craft sale, and it's always well attended. And then a bonfire outside, you could cook hot dogs, and so just hats off to these people. They had Don Myers there with his horse and buggy, dressed up as Santa Claus, getting everybody rides, and it's a good thing.
Okay. Councilor Cush?
I'm good.
Okay,
I'm good.
all right. For myself, I missed a council meeting. I went down to see my folks on the island, and they're getting to that age, so I had the opportunity to go. And I apologize for missing that council meeting, but prior to that, I did, so I'm gonna go back a little bit. So on the 17th of November, I got to bring greetings to the students of Hilltop High, and it was interesting because I got this invite about 2 days before the event was about to happen. And I got there and we spoke to the principal, and he said, this is the first one we've done in 2.5 years that's been public, so we're out of practice, and we didn't get the invites out on time, so thanks for coming on short notice, but it was great to be able to actually attend something like that again and speak on behalf of the county. So I brought greetings from the council there. Had some meetings with, and you're gonna see some of this coming up in close, was that Go Broadband attended the Santa Claus parade along the Santa Claus parade with everybody. And it was a cold night. There were some very brave people out there, and it was I'll say the same thing everyone else did, was the decorations on the plow and the names and everything. It all seemed to go over quite well. Everybody was happy, so nice to see. The other thing I'm going to point out, and I just forwarded a letter on to everybody, but this little tidbit was going on for about 1.5 years, maybe longer, maybe even 2 years. Was the ASO redesign, the ASO tariff that was going on. So this came to us back prior to the election. there was a delivery tariff that was gonna be put on by the Alberta Electric System Operator. So the Alberta Forest Protection Products Association representative came, well, vice president came to us, along with communications with the mills, and they were very concerned this was gonna have a big impact on their business model, because their price of power would have gone significantly higher. And as you know, the mills use a lot of power, so anyways, we began some discussions, and the RMA also got involved, the Rural Municipalities of Alberta also got involved. And I got a letter from the Alberta Forest Protection Association, and long story short, the letters that Woodlands County had sent and the activities done by RMA and that team, they had an opportunity to have a conversation when it went to the Utilities Board, and the Utilities Board did not approve that model. So they're gonna have to find another funding model. And you still have to find the funding model to support the service, obviously, but it's not gonna be to just dump it all on those users. So, little good news on advocacy. It takes 2 years to get there, so I just thought I'd share that with everybody. Attended the RMA, got my workbook for land use and planning here, so that was about it for me. Does anyone, oh, I forgot, I was in the province. The provincial government's been working really hard to try and get the caribou protections wrapped up. So I will typically have 3-day meetings, 3 full day meetings about with a group and deal with that. And they have a very patient, very bright facilitator that goes along with this. And the hotel, so I woke up to the fire alarm going off, and the hotel had actually caught fire, kind of a little bit, minor fire. But there was some smoke in the building and everything, and that's kind of why I was coughing through that meeting the other night, because I got a little lungful of that, I guess, that I wasn't aware of. Anyways, that's it for me. Are there any questions for me?
On the caribou, where are we at on that?
There's still 3 or 4 range plans to write. So the process that they're going through right now is the task force does a whole pile of recommendations, and there's a system that they use to kind of narrow them down. We're trying to come to consensus on some of those recommendations as to how they're worded. And then there's considerations in the recommendation along with rationale as to why you want those things considered in the plan. Then the Alberta government writes the plan and submits it to the federal government and tries to decide where we're at on the caribou recovery strategy. So there's still a few ranges to be done yet, but they are definitely accelerating the process. That's
Is the
why.
federal government involved in that too? Or?
Well, it's the Federal Species of Risk Act that's driving that legislation. So the risk, I guess, is that if the plan that the province writes isn't accepted, then the federal government comes in and says, okay, here's the caribou range area in this area. The legislation says 65% of it has to be undisturbed. So we're just gonna put a line around the area, and no logging, no development, no human intervention, no nothing. You guys don't go there for the next 60 years. So in the areas that we're talking about, there's oil and gas development, there's logging, there's, and we all know that mills, I mean, they have a 60-year cut plan out in front of them, because it's a long-term investment in forestry. So if they lose access to wood, it's devastating to the mills, it's devastating to the industry and everything that supports, and then the municipalities around them begin to collapse, and so it's a really big issue, but that's where the legislation trickles down to. Anything else? Okay, then I'll accept a motion, Councilor Cush.
Motion that council accepts the council reports and questions.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. That will bring us to CAO report.
Your worship, members of council, briefly working on the patrol services contract with Mr. Shep and trying to get in touch with Mr. Premio, the CAO for Lac Saint and County. Budget in the past, still presenting that and work with Andrew on that. The ICF agreement is in closed session as well as the developers agreement, and you received a personnel matter email, and we can discuss that in closed session.
Okay.
That's my report.
Any questions to our CEO? Councilor Williams.
I'll make a motion that council accepts the CAO report as information.
Thank you, Councilor Williams. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. That will bring us to Councilor Cush. Go ahead.
Move to go into committee of the whole under FOIP 16, 21, 23, 24.
Thank you. All right, motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Excellent. Okay, we're back from our closed session under committee of the whole, so we have a couple of motions coming out of this under 11.1. Councilor Wilhelm.
I'll make a motion that Woodlands County Council accept the presentation as information. I'm gonna make two motions, or do you
Yep.
want me to?
Yes. So that motion's accepted. Any discussion? All in favor? All right.
I'll make a second motion that Woodlands County Council drafts a letter of support for Go Broadband.
Okay, thank you. And any discussion on that? All in favor? Thank you, that is carried. 11.2. That's Councilor Williams.
I'll make a motion that council approve a subdivision time extension until January 31st, 2023 for 2009 sub 18 on Southeast 28, 58, 58, 13 west of it.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Councilor Williams.
I'll make another motion that council accept the discussion on subdivision 2009 sub 18 agreement as information.
Thank you, Councilor Williams. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? That is carried. 11.3, ICF update.
And we got one more.
Oh, that's right, there is one more out of there, sorry, there's a third, Councilor Dean.
So I would move that council with respect to subdivision 2009 sub 18 on Southeast 28, 58, 13 west of the 5th, waive policy section 2.12 of policy 3218.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? That is carried. Item 11.3, ICF update.
I'll make a motion that council accept the IC intermunicipal collaboration framework update as information.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Councilor Colton.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilor Colton. No discussion on the motion to adjourn. All in favor? Very good. We stand